Hey, it's Sunday, 27th of February 2022, and today, or tonight, because it's dark outside now, I am going to be talking about both one of the best and the worst live albums of all time. The best live album is what it could have been, and the worst live album is what we actually got. It is Depeche Mode's Songs of Faith and Devotion. Oops, that's upside down. Let me fix that. There you are, just to prove that this is real, not rehearsed. It is Depeche Mode's Songs of Faith and Devotion Live, which is here, and their devotional concert release from 1993, which is there. And that means talking about the Depeche Mode single, In Your Room, and the Devotional Tour, and the album that has the live album on it, and the live VHS and later DVD, which is here. So we started off, I think the last time I talked about Depeche Mode, I talked about the Songs of Faith and Devotion album and the singles, which happened in 1993. So that's I Feel You, Walking in My Shoes, Condemnation. And there's a little bit of bleed over between the Condemnation single and this period. The second 12-inch of Condemnation here, one of the best 12-inch singles of all time, is a 4-track live EP recorded at the Forum in Milan in 1993. Came in a gatefold sleeve. Gorgeous little bit of work there. But they'd taken 4 of the tracks from the live show: Condemnation, Halo, Enjoy the Silence, and Personal Jesus, and they'd taken them and put them on the 12-inch single. And that kind of indicated, well, why aren't they doing a live album? Well, they did. The Devotional Tour was 157 shows in 2 parts. The first one, 97 shows in 1993. The second part, called the Exotic Tour, from February through to July 1995, 60 shows, and that broke the band. And I have to talk about the live show and how it was constructed and how it was arranged. Now, there are 2 significant live releases from this tour. I have to be really blunt about them. Songs of Faith and Devotion Live, I don't have it on vinyl because I didn't like it when it came out, and I don't like it now. And the Devotional DVD, which was last issued in 2004. Quite why they can't still get round to pulling their fingers out and sticking out Live in Hamburg out on DVD when 101 got a Blu-ray release, I don't quite know, but so be it. I don't make the decisions, I just make the decision not to purchase the really stupid and expensive, ludicrous box sets which they release these days. So let's I'm talking through the Devotional Tour. It started off in, I think, Lille, might have been Zurich actually, and the first show of the tour was captured on this bootleg CD called Mode on the Road. It was an expensive purchase for me, but it was the first Depeche Mode show of the Devotional Tour. This is an audience recording of it. There's a website called DM Live Wiki, which has lots and lots of live shows for you to download. So I'm going to suggest that if you want to hear these shows, go there and download them. And this kind of follows on from the general graphic approach that we had for the I Feel You single and some of the other releases. You've got the photographs of the various band members. There was a burgeoning bootleg CD industry in the 90s. Double bootleg live CDs would cost maybe £25, which was an astronomical amount of money. In fact, it still is, come to think of it. Although these days mostly everybody buys records, don't they? Although people tell you that CDs are dying, that's only because CDs are less than half the price of vinyl, and vinyl makes more money, and they sell more, and they go, oh, we've sold more vinyl than we have CDs. Well, of course, when they're 2.5 times more expensive, you can sell 2.5 times less and say that you're making more money, and you've got bigger volume sales than you have got CDs. So it's all in statistics and finance and numbers and spreadsheets. Money, money, money. Everything counts. But Mode on the Road, first live CD that came out from the tour, audience recording, features the whole show apart from, I think, Fly on the Windscreen, which they did play, but wasn't on the CD for some reason. Don't know why. These CDs would just turn up, and then you'd make a decision to buy them or not. The second show on the tour was, I think it was in Zurich actually, and here is the second show on the tour from Zurich at the Hallenstadion on May the 21st, 1993. And again, this is the whole show, slightly different set list to Mode on the Road. So, for example, this one has the first performance of Mercy and Me on it. This one has Get Right With Me on instead. And this one ends at Enjoy the Silence and doesn't feature Everything Counts on there. But again, an audience recording, not amazing. So the Devotional Tour started off, as I've said before, in Lille in May. I think it was May the 19th, I think, 1993, with an official first show in Zurich. And it was released in a filmed form in December 1993 on a VHS tape. And it was called Devotional. And an hour-long version of that was shown on British television just before it was released on VHS. So the Songs of Faith and Devotion live album and the Devotional VHS were released in the week before Christmas to make sure that if you needed to buy a Christmas present for the Depeche Mode fan in your life, it could be yourself, there was an option. And the band just brought their touring to a close with a final show at Wembley Arena in early December 1993. So the band started putting together the live show in, I think, February 1993, and this is where we started to see, I think, the first cracks in the Depeche Mode operation, primarily because Dave, Martin and Andy kind of absented themselves from preparations for the live shows. Alan Wilder and Steve Leon worked for probably 2 months pulling together the live set. And when it came to arranging the live set, they were using new Roland technology. So they effectively, when they did a live set, it wasn't just, well, let's bring out the presets that we've got from the previous albums, load them up, and then put them all onto portable, machines, and then we'll take them out on tour. It involved getting a whole new bunch of new technology, reprogramming everything, and recreating old albums so the songs from them could be played live on stage. It's boring. It's legwork. And the other element that you have to think about at the time was the technical limitations of the technology that was available to them. I remember seeing Nights of Red at Middlesbrough Arena in 1992, and the technical limitations of the machinery that they had with them then wasn't quite as verbose and huge as Depeche's machine, and they certainly didn't have backup machines running off stage, but what it did is sometimes it took 30 seconds to load up all of the sound banks that you had to play for the next song. And so the arrangements that Alan was creating for the songs were in such a way so that you could, for example, at the end of the preceding song, perhaps the player would stop maybe 20 seconds before the end of the song while the other performers continued to play the rest of the song, and then they would automatically press a foot pedal or load a disc, and it would load the sounds for the next song. And it took about 30 seconds to load the sounds for the song, and you relied on every sound for the songs being loaded perfectly every time for the show to go particularly well. Sometimes some people loaded the wrong sounds, and so therefore when somebody was going to play a keyboard line, let's pretend you've got the video of Alan Wilder going ding 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 ding. When you've got the wrong one, suddenly you would end up with actually a percussion sound that would be played on a keyboard instead of perhaps that particular melodic synth sound that you were expecting. And it's pretty much seat of your pants type of stuff, but mostly it worked. But what you would have is it would take 30 seconds to load the sound into the new machine. And so therefore, you had to extend the beginnings and the endings of the songs to allow the technology enough time to catch up with the songs that it was being expected to play. So let's say the end of Walking in My Shoes is extended on the live version. So that would mean that maybe Alan and Martin were playing a part, but then since Fletch, who basically never played anything anyway, his part may have ended 30 seconds before the end of the song. He pressed a button so that it would load up the next bunch of sounds for the next song, which by the way is Behind the Wheel according to this DVD, and he could then press a button and start Behind the Wheel, presumably with the sound of the revving engine and the steel hubcap, which wasn't actually a steel hubcap, and then it would be a very basic pre-programmed rhythm of a bass drum and a bass synth, which Fletch could probably just about pull off, to be honest. And that's why some of the Depeche Mode songs are longer when they played them live, especially in those days, because of the limitations of the technology. And on stage was where the songs really had proper, and I think the extravagant, almost grandiose arrangements. Songs like Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, Never Let Me Down Again, In Your Room, those type of songs, they had longer endings. Walking in My Shoes had a longer introduction and an ending, and extra parts inside which you could later hear on the 12 inches. And now that's why the songs on the live albums are always longer. Simple, old-fashioned technology. So when I saw Nights Are Ebb at Middlesbrough Arena, I think it was after I Give to You, the sequencers that they had. They had 3 players. They had 2 drummers, one Bon who also played keyboards, and Doug who ran around the pit and shouted, kind of like an almost budget Depeche, actually. The keyboards and sequencers which Bon was controlling crashed and didn't load correctly. So there was an awkward pause where everyone just kind of looked at each other, almost like the 3 Spider-Man meme, when they're all looking at each other and just going, guess I need to think about some jokes while the computer launches. And that's proof that it's being played and delivered live, I guess. And obviously this happened with Depeche a few times. But the big problem that they had is that they were using new Roland technology. I can't think of saying Roland without thinking about Roland Rat and the voice that Errol, the gerbil, I think, or a hamster, uses when he talks about Roland Rat. Sorry, guys. But Roland technology. And they spent 3 months programming the live set. So what you've got there is you've got 3 keyboards that are all built up with a second set of 3 keyboards that are running duplicate models and duplicate sequences and patches on there. So you've got 6 keyboards on stage, plus you've got a backup which is working off stage, and you've got a drum kit. So they'd built all of this set to be played back on these new Roland keyboards. And after 3.5 months of work, 2 weeks before the tour, everything crashed. They lost all of their work. They had backups from the previous week, and they then had to firstly go, shit, we've lost everything that we've designed for the tour. Do we have to cancel the tour? And the second one was, we need to get some new Roland keyboards because none of these things are working. And they sued Roland, and they got the purchase price of the machines back, which was about £20,000. And then they had to start again. So they had to do it. They pushed back a week, plus the extra week to source the equipment. Basically made it by the skin of their teeth. So they started the tour in a kind of unrehearsed fashion. Not that they were unrehearsed, but not perhaps as well rehearsed as they would like to have been. Hence the first show at Lille perhaps being a little bit ropey. And all of that is captured on the Devotional DVD here. Although obviously this is a different show. They did 3 legs actually, for the Devotional Tour in 1993. So they started off with a set of European summer shows, largely coming on stage about 8 o'clock, coming on stage in daylight, playing two and a bit hours maybe, with support acts, mostly indoor arenas, sometimes stadiums, ending at a big UK show at the Crystal Palace Sports Ground, supported by the Sisters of Mercy, which I didn't get to. Like previous episodes, I was really poor then and struggling for cash, and I couldn't afford the £17.50 to go and see my favourite band play. And I couldn't even afford to see £17.50 to go and see them supported by the Sisters of Mercy at the Crystal Palace Bowl. And there was a spot in the car. I just didn't have the cash. I just couldn't physically afford the thing. Now you can argue, why didn't you ask your friends for money? Well, my friends were like 20. They were broke too. They were not well off. And I didn't know when I'd be able to get the money to pay them back anyway. So, I was struggling. But the European tour was filmed and recorded. So there were, I think, 6 shows on the European tour that were recorded. There were Milan, Louvain, Copenhagen, Frankfurt, Barcelona, and London. And the Louvain show on the 29th of July 1993 became the main source for the live albums and the Devotional DVD and VHS soundtrack that you've got on here. Frankfurt and Barcelona were filmed by Anton Corbijn, largely as extras. The main part of the main show is from Louvain here, which is on here. And then the other 3 shows, Copenhagen, Frankfurt and Barcelona were filmed alongside Louvain. Milan and Copenhagen and London were also recorded for the live album. So you had 6 shows which the band could pick from, and they chose Louvain as the main one that was going to be the main part of the VHS and the film kind of visuals and soundtrack. So when the Devotional DVD was released in 2004, the Livan show was finally available in full. 2 songs were taken off the Livan VHS in 1993, and those songs were Halo and Policy of Truth. But they were recorded and the band reused them. So let's move to the show in Livan and Devotional. Devotional and the Songs of Faith and Devotion live album were largely compiled, mixed, produced and prepared in early August 1993, when the band came off the European part of the first European leg of the Devotional Tour. Steve, Leon and Alan Wilder went to, I think, Windmill Studios in Dublin, and they spent a week preparing the live album and the soundtrack. So they mixed the Livan show, and at the same time they also mixed the London show, which was going to be broadcast on BBC Radio. And the London show at Crystal Palace was unofficially released on this fantastic and absolutely essential bootleg live album, I Feel You. This is one of my very favourite live albums of all time. This is better than the officially released Songs of Faith and Devotion album, by the way. And this has 14 song live sets. So it's got Higher Love, Policy of Truth, Walking in My Shoes, Stripped, Halo, Condemnation, Judas, I Feel You, Never Let Me Down Again, Rush, In Your Room, Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, and Everything Counts. Now there's a slight bit of cheating with the London broadcast. A lot of the vocals were swapped out for the vocals that were recorded in Livan because Dave's voice was better. Dave's voice was a little croakier and a little huskier when they played London. But they did keep for the broadcast the in-between song bits, the bits where Dave said very specifically, yeah, we've booked a full moon for you tonight, sorry, only joking, cost too much, those type of things. And there are parts of the Crystal Palace show that Dave didn't sing, the first chorus of Stripped, the ending of Everything Counts, which are on this radio broadcast because they're taken from the Livan show. There you go, train spotters. Hopefully that's not too boring, although clearly it absolutely definitively is. And the Songs of Faith and Devotion album, the live album, was released in December 1993 at the same time as Devotional. And the decision to do the Songs of Faith and Devotion live album was to take the 10 songs from the new album that the band had been playing live and to present them in album sequence, although with the live arrangements on one album using the same catalogue number, LCD Stum 106, Train Spotters. And this is one of the worst live albums of all time. In fact, when I did my episode way back, maybe number 86, and I did worst live albums of all time, Songs of Faith and Devotion live is most definitely one of the worst live albums of all time. And the reason being is that there's an extra 28 minutes on the CD. The band don't use that for previously unreleased live songs such as Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, World in My Eyes, Halo, Policy of Truth. No, they use it just to present the 10 songs from the album presented in sequence. And the track listing for the live shows is very, very different to the sequence that we use for the album. So, for example, Songs of Faith and Devotion live. I love the cover, by the way. But the sequence is terrible. You know, you start the album with I Feel You, which is normally something like the 10th song of the set. You then go to Walking in My Shoes, which is normally about the 4th or 5th. You then go to Condemnation, which is the 6th or 7th. Mercy and You, which is, let's check on the DVD, that's track 8. Here it's track 4. Judas, which comes directly after Mercy and You on this album, is the song that the band play immediately before Mercy and You. And then you go to I Feel You. I Feel You is track 1, which follows after Mercy and You on the set list, but is in fact on the beginning of the side and not the end of the side. In Your Room, which is the song that ends the main set, becomes the start of side 2. Get Right With Me is on there, which takes a rotational slot. Rush is on the album, but Rush directly precedes In Your Room, except here where it becomes after Get Right With Me. There's One Caress, and then the album closes with Higher Love. Higher Love being the first song that the band performed live in the whole show. So, Songs of Faith and Devotion, putting it very charitably, is a piss poor live compilation that is not worth the silver that it is pressed on. Certainly don't buy it on vinyl, it's not worth it. Terrible live album. Devotional, this is the version to get of the show. This is the definitive Depeche Mode live document with pictures, and if I remember correctly, the live album is also presented in a 5:1 mix on the DVD, I think. So, yeah, 5:1 and PCM stereo. So this is most definitely the version to get. Don't get the live album. But Devotional is mostly a filmed performance at Livan, and it's 90 or so minutes plus 2 bonus tracks, Halo and Policy of Truth. And then disc 2 on the DVD edition has the projections that we use for 8 songs during the live set, 6 videos, a couple of documentaries, and like a talk through thing by Anton about the stage design. Let's go inside the DVD, because this is really where it's at. This is easily the best version to get. So you've got the gatefold sleeve here, stripped, the photograph from the Condemnation cover. You've got the 2 discs here on the fold-out sleeve. You've got a photograph of the band performing what looks to be I Feel You live, and then you open it up and you've got 2 discs in here, but you've also got on the inlay tray Anton Corbin's very own hand-drawn sketch of what the stage might look like. So it looks lovely, actually. It looks well presented. It's very definitely in need of a rescan and an upgrade, but you also get almost like a mini version of the Devotional Tour booklet here. So some of the photographs that you would have in the tour book, and some of the text and things like that have been adapted for the DVD booklet, and at the same time a PDF of the Devotional Tour booklet is in the DVD as well. So there you have it. So what we've got to say about this is not only does this contain some of the definitive live takes of the songs, it's also the last full-length live recording by Depeche that was released while Alan Walter was a member of the band. And there are a number of songs which I want to kind of highlight out and mention those as being specifically absolutely bloody brilliant. There's a definitive take of World in My Eyes, which is about 6.5 minutes, and it has this glorious intro that slowly brings in every part of the song. So if you ever listen to the LP version of World in My Eyes that opens with that very basic bass line, do 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 dee do dee do dee do dee, and you go, oh, I wish it had a more dramatic intro. It's on here, guys. When Alan Wilder sold his equipment in, I think, 2010 or 11 or thereabouts, enterprising fans accessed the remaining information that was on that equipment, including the live arrangements for things like World in My Eyes. So you can hear, and in fact I've created a mix cloud. I've done a mix of the devotional arrangements of World in My Eyes, where I've taken isolated vocals from the 5:1 mix of Violator and added those over the live version, which has been recreated and played back from Alan's old equipment, which I regard as, it was a very interesting afternoon doing that. But also, Devotional has a number of live songs which haven't been released before. One of the things that Depeche said was, well, we only did a live album 5 years ago. Surely there's going to be a fair amount of duplication between that. Well, yes and no. At this point, the band were only playing, I think, 3 songs, maybe 4 songs. They only played 3 songs from 101, the previous live album, and those being Stripped, Behind the Wheel, and Never Let Me Down Again. So of the 16 songs that were on here, 13 of them had never been on a Depeche live album before. In fact, more than that, because you've got the 10 songs on the album, plus you've got Death's Door, which is the B-side of Condemnation, which the band were playing live. You also had Fly on the Windscreen, and you had the 5 tracks from Violator. So that will give you 16 songs, which haven't been on any previous live release, if you went and bought all the singles and B-sides. And you couldn't get all of those on one CD, but it seems bizarre and a little bit wrong to me that the band didn't do a double live album of Devotional live. It's the biggest missed goal, or the biggest open goal that the band missed in their career, to be honest, because fans really want it. We don't want 101 on Blu-ray. If you could actually put out the Devotional soundtrack on CD and Blu-ray, that would be much better, guys. We prefer that era. But no, Devotional is I think one of the best live recordings that's been released, and it's really upsetting and slightly annoying that it's not available in an audio form as maybe a triple LP and a double CD. Maybe they'll do it for the 30th anniversary, the album you fans wanted at the time but we were too stubborn to release, instead of this monstrosity. So, following the release of the album, December 1993, 10th of January 1994, saw the release of the final single from the Alan Wilder era, In Your Room. One of my very favourite Depeche tracks ever, this one. The single was remixed with some additional recordings and new guitar on it, remixed by Butch Vig, who you all know from such fantastic House of Pain remixes as Shamrock and Shenanigans, also drummer in Garbage, and producer of albums such as Nirvana's Nevermind. This came in a very unique and unusual cross kind of shape configuration that opened out, so you could put the the CD in there, and then you create almost like a gigantic. I mean, if you blue tack that to your wall, I mean, yeah, that's ambitious, but it's bizarre and unusual packaging. It really, really is. And it came with 2 mixes of Death's Door, the standard Zephyr mix and the extended version, which run to about 6 minutes. And there's the promotional video by Anton. Anton felt that maybe the band were coming to a close, and so the promotional video that he shot for it featured a light bulb in every shot in the same spot. That was the constant that ran all through the video, and then repeats of things that you'd seen in previous videos, like Behind the Wheel or Personal Jesus, or maybe some of the tour material. So you kind of got a sense that this might be Depeche Mode wrapping up. Anton was very clearly doing that, and I think that was starting to be a feeling that maybe Depeche weren't going to continue too much longer. There were 2 12-inches. I didn't buy those. I bought the CD singles instead. And here is a brilliant CD single. This is 4 live tracks, so it features In Your Room, taken from the live album, but also Policy of Truth, World in My Eyes, and Fly on the Windscreen. If you're sat there going, really need some extra live tracks to fill out my C90 of the Devotional Tour, this is the beastie for you. The other CD single, this one here, has Never Let Me Down Again and Death's Door on it. So almost everything from the tour has now been officially released if you go through a combination of CD singles, live albums and DVDs. And the last CD was this remixes of In Your Room, featuring the Jeep Rock mix, the Apex mix, which was remixed by Brian Eno. The Jeep Rock mix was done by Johnny Dollar and Jeff Barrow of Portishead, and then there was the Adrenaline mix of Higher Love, which is awful, and I do not recommend you spend any time thinking about it. It is really bad. And with that, the Devotional Tour came to a close, but the band carried on, and they did a thing called the Exotic Tour. 60 shows in South America, South Africa, Australia, and back to America and Canada. And there was no compelling reason to do this apart from money. I think Andy Fletcher was the one that was most against it, and he left the band halfway through the tour. The other ones realised that they'd spent a lot of money on the Devotional Tour and they weren't making a huge amount of profit. So the Exotic Tour was an opportunity to play places they hadn't played before, and to present a stripped down staging that was cheaper to run so they could make more money. And if the end result of the Exotic Tour was to make money, then that tour was wildly successful. If the end result of the Exotic Tour was to keep Depeche Mode together, it was wildly unsuccessful. It was too many shows, too many miles, too many drugs, too many late nights, too many kidney stones, too many fits, too much alcohol. The band just couldn't carry on by the end of it. They massively rethought the set as well. So for the Devotional Tour, because they were starting in daylight, they were starting with Higher Love, and it was a very gentle, slow staging, because when they were it was just about dusk. It was probably around about the time that those shows were starting, 8:15, 8:30 maybe. When it got to the Exotic Tour, it was a different time of year. Starting in February, running through to a show in Indianapolis on the 8th of July 1994, the 16-month tour really threw out the set list and started again. 2 official recordings are circulating from this tour. One from Hawaii's Blaisdell Arena, and this last one, which is somewhere in LA or San Francisco, California, in the summer of 1994. I will post a link to all of the official circulating recordings that there are. But the band changed the set list. They opened with Rush, and they ditched Policy of Truth, and they ditched a number of other songs. So they changed Rush, so it was longer and more extended. They changed vocals on Condemnation, so that Martin sang it instead of Dave. They added a new version, a new arrangement of I Want You Now, which is an absolutely incredible arrangement. I wish it had got a proper release. And they also added Somebody and A Question of Time. The shows were probably about 3 songs shorter, but they changed probably 4 or 5 songs during that set. So if you saw the first half of the Devotional Tour, you probably saw 7 or 8 songs that you didn't see if you were watching the Exotic Tour. Watching the Exotic Tour, you probably got 4 or 5 songs that you hadn't seen on the Devotional Tour. And as I've said, the tour was just too long, really. The last show by the classic 4-piece Depeche lineup, Dave, Martin, Alan and Andy, was in Hawaii, I think, or Honolulu, in early April 1994. The tour took a break, and Fletch stopped touring with the band, and he was replaced by Daryl Beaumont, brother of The Cure's Perry Beaumont. And Daryl had been part of the band's infrastructure for a long period of time. He's in the 101 film. You can see him kind of hanging out with the band and working with them, although not on stage. Daryl hadn't played keyboards before, but never let that get in the way of being one of the 4 performers on stage at a stadium rock band. Alan and Daryl spent a week in hotel rooms rehearsing the set, so that Fletch wasn't even teaching Fletch wasn't teaching Daryl his parts, and Alan had to do it. And that's annoying. Imagine you decide, no, I'm not going to do a job that's going to make me millions of pounds. I'm not going to do it. And not only that, I'm not even going to hand over and show the guy that's coming in to do it, the stunt Andy, I'm not even going to show him what he did. And Daryl had not played keyboards before, as far as I can tell. And in a week, he'd managed to master all of Andy's parts. And I had no respect for Fletch for this at all. If you go and bail on a job, if you're going to bring in sick, it's got to be something that, you can't just ring in sick because you don't feel like working. There's got to be some really, really serious reasons why, especially when you're operating at that stage where you're an integral key cog in a multi-million-dollar machine that employs thousands of people and makes millions of dollars. You can't just go, well, I don't feel like it. It's a job, It's important to honour your commitments and to then not even want to hand over and show the incoming guy your parts. Alan had to show Daryl Andy's parts, the parts that Alan wasn't playing, and Daryl, who'd never played keyboards before, managed to pick it all up in a week. I have no respect for Fletch as a musician for this. At best, he has seemed painfully limited in his abilities. He's never shown any interest in advancing his musical abilities on stage. There's a section when I saw them in 2013 where they stopped in the middle of Just Can't Get Enough, and he played like 2 bars of the bass line to Just Can't Get Enough. And I was like, oh, isn't he brilliant? Fletch is like, no, that's piss easy to play. I've never played keyboards on stage. I could do that in 20 minutes if you showed me how to do it. And here's, Fletch, 30 years into his career, showing off something that you can pick up in 20 minutes. And I don't know what he plays on stage. I don't know what he does. He contributes nothing sonically that I can tell to the band at all, and hasn't done for a very long period of time. And this is where the resentment started to rise up between, I think, Alan and the other members of the band. So by the time they got to the end of the Exotic Tour, the last show, Indianapolis, I think, or it might have been Philadelphia actually. I don't know. I wasn't there. I was in a bedroom in Birmingham when it was happening. I was probably asleep. But the Exotic Tour ground to a halt. Depeche Mode were in pieces. Um, Dave had 2 broken ribs and an overdose during the course of the tour. You know, Alan had kidney stones. Martin had started to have fits. Fletch had bailed, 37 shows from the end, and got some guy that had never played keyboards to pick up all of his work without even bothering to show him how to play. And I think it was really sloppy, actually. And to be honest, if Fletch left tomorrow, Depeche, I think he's been grossly overcompensated for his contribution to the band. He has, as far as I can tell, not made any sonic contribution to the group. He's the only member of the group that's never written a song. Even the stunt guys, Peter and Christian, have written songs that are on Depeche Mode albums. Fletch is the only guy who's played on stage with Depeche as a permanent member or as a long-standing member, and not as a last-minute replacement, who's written not 1 second of music. I think he's a fraud, and I think he's been grossly overcompensated for it. He might be a lovely guy, I don't know, but he's a passenger in the band from a creative perspective, in my opinion, and he would have been fired from many other bands for his lack of input into the group. And this was one of the things that Alan alluded to. So Alan left the group in summer 1995, saying that, amongst other things, the distribution of the workload within the band was not really fair, which was a nice way of saying Fletch was getting paid the same amount as me, and I was doing all the work and he was doing fuck all. And I can't disagree with him on that. I'm not going to be one of these sad fanboys that goes, "Oh, Alan needs to come back to Depeche Mode." He's, as far as I can tell, works in a very different way, and is quite happy not being a member of Depeche and doesn't want to go back to working in a group environment. And if his experiences of the group or environments included the one which I perceive to have happened in Depeche towards his last few years, I completely understand why he wouldn't want to go back to a group environment, because there's a guy that gets paid a lot of money that basically does nothing on stage. And the fact that you could parachute in a replacement who'd never played keyboards before and get him up to match speed and get him playing to a stadium worth of people without any mistakes in a week is testament to just how painfully limited Fletcher's abilities are. So shame as it was, the Devotional Tour was the end of the classic 4-piece of Depeche, and I love the albums that they made with Alan. I really like lots and lots of the material that they recorded after Alan left. I think they're still really good, but Depeche Mode are basically a duo now of Martin and Dave. Fletch appears making up the numbers, standing in the background, scowling and playing maybe 8 notes of bass during a show. Peter does almost all of the keyboard work, and Christian, he bangs the drums and he does a great job of it. And live Depeche now is very good, but it's clearly unequal, and I hope that is now reflected in the band's financial structure, because it was obviously causing resentments, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why Alan left. I haven't looked at his statement as to why he left. Let me see if I can find it. No, I haven't got it to hand. It was on the screen over there, but I forgot to read it before I came to here. But I completely understand why. We've all been in working environments where we feel one person does a lot more of the work than certain other people, and it's unfair and it causes resentments. Now, whether those perceptions are accurate or not is another thing. Me looking at Depeche Mode from the outside, it looked like Alan did a heck of a lot more work musically than Fletch did. Martin, Dave, and Alan clearly all pulled their weight in the group. Fletch didn't, in my opinion, still doesn't. But since I'm not in Depeche Mode, I don't get a choice about whether he gets to go or not. But out of all the bands that I like, and you can imagine I like quite a lot here, he is probably the least useful member of any band that I like, to be honest. Apart from possibly Bez, who doesn't appear on stage with the Happy Mondays anymore, and I don't really like the Happy Mondays, so it's not really a thing. So that's where it left us. 157 shows, 2 tours, a bad live album, a great live VHS, a whole bunch of extra live material, a bodge job of what could have been one of the best live albums of all time, a band that was on its knees by the end of the tour. Dave was deep in the throes of drug addiction, and it looked like he might not survive. Martin wasn't writing songs, Fletch wasn't playing music, and hadn't decided to sit out the last 37 shows of the tour, and it really felt like Depeche Mode had ground to a halt and things couldn't be the same again. With Alan's decision to leave, I think he thought maybe he'd split Depeche Mode, and if he had, it would have been a shame, but it would have been completely understandable. But also, there are times in working environments where you have to go, well, actually, if I don't stand for something, I'll fall for anything. And if I don't stand up for myself and what I believe in, then I will continue to harbour resentments. And that's unhealthy. Sometimes you need to know when to leave certain situations. And, I wish Alan all the best success with Recoil, although Recoil have not been active for 10 years now. And obviously Depeche have been more active and more successful in a completely new configuration and finding a new way of working. But Depeche looked like they were over. Dave's overdoses and dying for a few minutes at a time in 1996, when I was reading about them in the NME before the internet was a thing, it was quite hairy, because I was kind of thinking, have I seen the end of Depeche Mode? Did I miss the last tour because I didn't have £17.50? Is the live album that's frankly piss poor, is that the last thing I'm going to get? And I don't know. And obviously the mid-90s, 1995, 1996, there were rough times to be fans of bands like The Cure and Depeche and New Order. New Order had split, The Cure had lost 2 members, Depeche had looked like they'd played their last, and were, it was nothing left now of the band. But as we will see, that wasn't the end of the group. There was more fuel left in the tank, and the next Depeche Mode adventure and chapter came in 1997 with the release of the album Ultra, which I will do. And the next time I talk about Depeche Mode, I will talk about Ultra, and I will talk about the singles tour, the first post-Alan tour since the band's very first year, and go into more detail about that. This was not a fun time to be a fan of Depeche Mode. They did some amazing shows, they played some amazing things, they did brilliant records. The live album sounded phenomenal, and yet at the same time everything was falling apart and nothing seemed to fit. And when Depeche Mode came back in 1997, there were 3 people instead of 4, and the world was very different. And that is the next time I talk about Depeche Mode, because I think I bitched about Fletch enough, just in case any of you haven't worked out. Not a fan of him, but definitely a fan of Depeche. Anyway, stay beautiful. I will post links down there to video footage and circulating soundboard recordings from the Devotional Tour and the version of I Want You Now that the band played on the tour as well. And stay beautiful, and see you all soon. Okay, I'm going to go now. Have a lovely rest of the day. In fact, whatever day it is, whatever time it is you're watching, whatever it is, stay beautiful. I'm worried about the world. I'm worried about everybody who's in the world. But I'm confident that we're going to be okay, because hope is a superpower. See you all later. Bye.